Next, item 8, presentation of the 2020 census and council redistricting. IT manager Dave Sorensen and former IT manager Bill Ely are here to present this information. And welcome back to Mr. Ely. Did I say that right, sir? Bill, is your last name, is it Ely?
It's Ely, yes.
All right.
Okay. Recently, I've been volunteering with the city's IT department in order to perform the City Council district redistricting task following the 2020 census. The results of that effort will be presented to Council in the very near future. This evening, I should like to provide some preliminary information in the form of a PowerPoint presentation going over the Census Bureau guidelines and methods of completing the redistricting. The reasons that I'm participating in this task, since I've already retired, are twofold. Firstly, I get to meet up with some of my old colleagues. And secondly, I have some experience in the process of redistricting, something that is hard to find when the task only occurs every 10 years. Back in 2010, we actually redistricted or did a redistricting project twice. If you remember back then, there was a charter amendment in the offing to reduce the number of council districts from 9 to 7. And the outcome of that potential change came very close to the time frame that the county required the information for the electoral process. So we went ahead and we redistricted for 9 council districts to start with. Then the city changed to a 7 council district setup, and we redistricted again to 7 council districts. So we've completed the process twice back in 2010. The redistricting process itself is essentially the same in 2020 as it was for the 2010 census. The one major change is the size of the population units being used by the Census Bureau. In 2010, the population was presented in census blocks. A census block was a population in a small unit typically bordered by streets and side streets. So a street may have contained several census blocks determined by the number of side street intersections. Moving numbers from district to district back then involved reassigning the district numbers in dozens or hundreds of census blocks. It was a very manually intensive operation. For 2020, the Census Bureau decided to provide population data in what it called census block groups. They combined similar contiguous census blocks, like the original little census blocks from 2010, into larger units with more defined boundaries. And the city's in-house development, and the city's in-house development of redistricting software has made the redistricting process really easy to perform. So I'll go into the PowerPoint now. And for some reason I'm not working.
We can see it, looks good.
Okay, there we go. The goal of the redistricting, for those who need that information, is to provide the city of Bremerton equal city council representation by adjusting council district boundaries in line with the population counts from the census itself. District boundaries should be adjusted so that the district populations are as nearly equal as possible. This has been a little more difficult in 2020 than it was in 2010 because we're now working with bigger units, moving bigger units around. So equalization is a little more difficult. Census block groups should be contiguous within districts. You can't move a census block group into the middle of another district. you can only move contiguously. And census block groups, since that's the only reference we have with the Census Bureau, cannot be broken apart. This was a standard back then, and it's standard now. District boundaries should follow natural and sometimes artificial geographical features, and we should do our best to maintain neighborhoods within district boundaries. This becomes a little more interesting. Political consideration should not be a factor in redistricting decision making. And along the same lines, redistricting decisions should not be affected by the residential address of seated council members. It's possible that seated council members could be moved to a different district by the redistricting process. That being the case, the city charter kind of has your back, because if you're moved to a different district, you remain the council representative for the district that elected you until that term expires. So, from the 2020 census, the total population of Bremerton was 43,505, which meant that the average district size should be as close to 6,215 as possible. These were the current district populations as of the 2020 census. And you can see that District 7 was significantly higher. District 4 was significantly lower than the target size of 6,215. This is a map of the council districts, and I'm not sure how well you can see this, but how this works, if you look at the boundary between District 7 and District 6, District 7 has to lose approximately 1,400 population, and the only contiguous boundary is with District 6. So District 7 block groups will be moved into District 6. That will then push District 6 above the 62,015 average, but District 6 has further contiguous boundaries with District 5 and District 4, so it's a case of spreading the thing across the city. As you can see, there's quite a variance in populations from the bar graphs on the side there. The idea is to get those as level as possible. The next steps is to present the results to council of the redistricting, and for council then to hold a public hearing, and after a 45-day appeal period to adopt by ordinance the redistricting. Data has to be received by the county, or at the county, by November 30th of this year. And that is my presentation to you. I'll take any questions you have.
Okay, Jeff.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for coming out of retirement and helping us out and looking at this. It's nice to have that expertise, for sure. I think my main question is, can you kind of define and describe again a census block group? So I just, as I'm understanding it, it's a geographically constrained area? Is it based on certain demographics conducted by the census?
Yes, it's defined by the Census Bureau, and what they've done is they've just, where the old census blocks were of similar nature, as you might get along a fairly long street, they've just accumulated those together into a census, into a block group.
Okay.
And so there are now far less block groups per neighborhood, for example, neighborhood being similar in nature.
How many
Oh,
people are typically in a block? And then I guess how many blocks make up a block group on average?
in a block, there was, I can give you a number from 2010. In 2010, there were 2,700,000 blocks that had 0 people in them. And a block was typically 6 to maybe 20 or 30 people. If a block was an apartment complex, obviously it would be more than that. Bremerton was somewhat unique in that we had a census block that was an aircraft carrier that had several thousand people in it.
Oh, so yes, sorry to interrupt. So a block is, gotcha. A block is literally like a city block. It's just a small geographical.
It typically, yeah, it's most of the time it's probably smaller than a city block.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And
And then the block groups are just collections of those like city blocks.
Okay.
They're not going to combine like a street block with an apartment complex because they're essentially different types of block.
So so the block group is based on, sounds more like geographical properties, not say
Right,
any other
right.
distinct. Okay.
And we find that the boundaries that go around the block groups are more significant. You know, the streets are more like highways as opposed to side streets and things like that.
Okay, gotcha. It's not like certain income levels are grouped together. It's all geographic. Okay. So that makes sense. Perfect. The only thing off the top of my head as we go forward, I just think would be helpful to see is, I don't know if it's possible to show the outlines of those block groups I'm assuming at some point we'll get like a before and after map that shows the changes.
Well,
yeah, okay, which would be fantastic to be able to flip back and forth. And then I don't know if it's possible to show the block groups on those, just so folks kind of know what changes might be possible, or they'll better see why some of the boundaries exist the way they are, or why they'll be proposed.
yeah, we can on the maps that you'll see, we can put the block group populations.
I mean, awesome. All right, well, thanks so much for all the work.
Hannah,
thank you. Okay, as the representative for District 6, and in the interest of the blood pressure of the representative for District 6, is it possible for you to zoom in on the boundaries of that district? I would like to know that I shall remain in it or that I shall not remain in it. I understand that you need to be impartial.
Right, and I can't show you that this evening, but certainly the maps that we'll be producing when we come to council with the redistricting finalization, then it will show more detail of your district.
Dave?
So, Ms. Mockler, the intent we're going to request we're going to have a proposal for a public hearing on the next study session after this one. And at that point, we'll be providing a map that shows all the boundaries and stuff as they exist now. With the block groups, we'll be able to zoom in, zoom out, and show you everything on it. The only thing we were doing tonight was just to give an outline of what we're going to do. We're just in preparation of creating all these maps and stuff so that we can show you on the actual study session when we propose the public hearing.
So may I ask a follow-up question? So the maps that we were looking at just now are not the proposed maps, they're the existing ones?
That is the existing population as it stands right now.
So they're the existing districts as they are?
Correct. That's the data that was downloaded directly from the census site and put into our system, and it created the map as it is. Then Bill will use this data to move the blocks as they go along.
Okay, thank you.
Jennifer?
I'm really hi, thank you, President Goodell. I'm really surprised to see the District 4 so low. I thought it would be much higher, but I'm assuming though, if is there a threshold by which you're not going to disturb a certain district? If I'm just, 1, 2, and 3 seem to be pretty close to the mark of 6215. We got 6325, 6255. I mean, that's pretty inconsequential, right? You're probably going to leave those alone.
The reason District 4 is so low is that back in 2010, there were close to 4,000 Navy personnel included in District 4's population.
Oh, wow.
And so the civilian population of District 4 was relatively low compared to other districts. This time, the 2020 census, there's only, I think it's 1,600 Navy personnel included in District 4's population.
Why was that? Do you have any explanation for that? Was the boat out at sea? I mean, they still can take the census, but.
I suspect back in 2010, the boats were home ported but active. In 2020, I think they've got skeleton crews on because they're being worked on.
Oh, okay. Wow, that's really a drastic change. So
Yeah.
will you be redistributing? And I'm sorry, I don't mean to take your now I'm stealing everybody's thunder, Jeff. I apologize, but so I mean, I guess you have to go by the numbers. You'll be redistributing into District 4, but then what happens when we get more Navy personnel? I mean, I guess that's just the way the numbers fall, huh?
Then we go back to a 2010 situation where the civilian population will reduce and the Navy population will increase. It will be an interesting concept since Bremerton has I believe they've got the 2 home ported carriers now. When they are both fully deployed, those carriers could themselves have a bigger population than the average district. And
well,
quite honestly, I don't know what would happen.
I do believe that they did go out to sea and they were required to kind of stay out to sea. They couldn't even go into port. So there were 2 boats that were out at the time of the census. Do they not get census when they're away? I mean, they can still take the census when they're out to sea, right?
Correct. Yes, the Navy handles that.
Okay.
And any of the naval personnel that don't register with their hometown, wherever that might be, are registered with the home port.
So they might have been registered with their hometown because they were young folks, and they just like you register to vote, you might keep it back in Iowa or Nebraska, wherever you're at.
Right.
Is that the same thing with the census? So they can do that. Okay. And so my first question though is just kind of like looking at District 1, 2, and 3. And also really, I mean, I see what you mean about needing to spill out to the adjacent District 6 and 5, but I'm just wondering, I see the need to adjust in those areas. And Anna, I understand she's worked hard to get here, so she wants to make sure she's going to stay there. But I guess, is there a threshold for, let's say 1, 2, and 3 that are pretty close to the 6215? Would you really be adjusting those 3 because they're kind of on the other side of the water? I mean, I guess that's all, it's part of public hearing and a process too, but do you foresee those changing?
The requirement is to adjust to as close as equal as possible. So
if I'm 110 residents away from that 6215, I'm probably safe, right? Okay, that's it. Mr. Ellie, I apologize. Was it Ellie or Eli? Ely, thank you. I missed it in the beginning. I appreciate your time. Thank you so much, Mr. Ely.
Anna.
Thank you. Just to say that I worked the census in 2020 and in Bremerton, and that those naval personnel that I found in their, in residences in Bremerton, almost to a person had taken the census in their hometowns. And then the second piece of information, perhaps this is anecdotal, but I have heard it from numerous people, but that in general, over 90% of the naval personnel that I have met or spoken to or heard of are also registered to vote in their hometowns. So if that anecdotal information is accurate, which is, always nice when that happens, then the absence of the troops would actually give a more accurate rendering of who lives and votes and is concerned about Bremerton. That's all I had to say. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll just comment on that as somebody who did 20 years in the military and retired here. Basically, I can tell you that I registered as a Washington State voter when I felt that this was my home, this was my community, and I had, been elsewhere for whatever reasons before. Jeff, go ahead.
Sure. Sorry for one more question. Possible can of worms. So let's say, so I'm assuming right now the guide, as Council Chairman was saying, the goal is if a district doesn't need any tweaks, bam, it's right on target hour. We're not going to tweak it. If the public wanted to make drastic changes, I think of my own district, right? I got both sides of the bridge, Minette downtown. No secret, a lot of different demographics, different people. If there were ever desire to say lump part of District 2 with part of District 3, I mean, to really redo the boundaries, is this the time for people to express that desire? Is that even a possibility? I just want to put the question out there.
It really isn't. District 3 was somewhat of an anomaly in 2010, in that its population required that we put it both sides of the water, that's typically not what you do with redistricting, because the water is a natural barrier and you should be on one side or the other. But without creating District 8, there was nothing we could do about it in 2010. And the same probably applies now. It's because of the populations over there, the District 3 is going to remain split, I think.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to check if that was even a possibility or not. It sounds like it, not necessarily impossible, but tough to do, and we've probably had enough changes here already. So just wanted to ask though. All right, thank you.
All right. Let's see. Okay. Well, I think that's all we have for tonight. Thank you for all the information on this. Bill, thank you for stepping up and helping this. Yeah, it is a bit of a can of worms. I can throw a rock probably out of my district from where I live, and I don't recommend throwing rocks. So anyways, it's very interesting to think that things could change. So all right.